So I've got my bucket of sap there ready to replenish my pan that I'm evaporating off of, and Francesca is ladling out some of the sap that has been boiling down for the last 3 days. Of course, I'm adding to it every day, but and she's going to start the finishing process on this batch.
Maybe one more.
And then I'm going to fill my pan back up, which will stop the boil, of course. But it's obviously, the fire is very hot, and so it should start boiling again within the next 15-20 minutes or so.
Okay, so I ladled into a strainer that had cheesecloth on it. If I pull the cheesecloth up, you can see that there's quite a bit of impurities in there and just things that needed to be filtered out. I will do a couple more filtering processes on it before we get the final product, but now we're going to work on boiling this down until it reaches about 219 degrees Fahrenheit, which will be a good boiling point for thickening up to be maple syrup.
So I've just topped my pan back up after Francesca took some of the sap out to start the finishing process. Again, that sap had been boiling for about 3 days, of course, evaporating down and then filling it back up with fresh sap. So it's fairly well concentrated. I waited till it got down about a half a pan today before she started pulling out of it. A couple of things to keep in mind when you're boiling. Number one, you don't want to fill your pan up too far. So I usually stay a couple of inches from the top. You don't want to boil over. That's the purpose of that. And then you don't want to let it get too low either, or you can scorch the syrup and cause some off flavors there, of course. You don't want burnt syrup. So my process usually is, again, I stay about 2 inches from the top. I let it boil down to about half a pan or so, and then I top it back up to that 2 inches from the top level. Obviously, it's boiling. You keep it to a boiling point as best you can on a wood fire, and I'm burning. You see I've got wood stacked. I'm letting it kind of dry out. It's raining, and it's not wood that's been inside or stored under cover all winter anyway. So I'm just kind of letting it dry out here and adding it to the fire. But that makes it a little more challenging, but you keep the fire going. When you boil down to about half of a pan, when you add that sap in, you're going to stop the boiling process, obviously. So you want to try to get your fire really hot, or have it ready to where it can really get hot before you add that syrup in there, or sap in there, to get it, to speed up the process. Another thing I've heard people do is they preheat their sap. So instead of just having, I've had it in buckets where we collected it from, and it's been sitting out on the porch. It was 30 last night, so sometimes it has ice in it, who knows. But instead of just pulling it straight from that temperature, you could preheat it. I just don't have a way to do that other than the propane stove, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a fire and doing it over the fire. But that's always an option as well. But anyway, so we're back to boiling down, adding to it, boiling down, added to it. We'll see how many more days. I've only got about a half a bucket of sap left now, but we haven't collected today. It's raining. I don't know if we'll collect today. We'll see. But as soon as I get some more sap, I probably will go collect, because I will have this boiled down, so we'll need more sap to keep the process going anyway. We'll see how much we get out of what Francesca has pulled out of there. Again, it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. I would estimate we've probably had about 40 gallons that we've collected so far. So we'll see kind of what we get. So what Francesca has done is transfer it out of the pot that she originally ladled it into from my larger pan into this pot, filtering it, because as it starts to get up to the temps that she wants it, which it was up to 215 degrees, it will start to develop some sand, and you don't want sand in your maple syrup. If you're making maple sugar, maple candy, that sand or granulation is actually part of the final product, but you don't want sand in your maple syrup. So she's transferred it here. She's got a candy thermometer in there monitoring it. She's going to get it up to 219 degrees, and then it should be finished.
Alright, so we got a little bit busy and I didn't completely film the rest of the maple syrup process, but after I do my third strain into my hot jars and then put the hot lids and rings on them, I will just turn the jars upside down. They will self-seal that way, and it is a perfectly shelf-stable, safe way to process your maple syrup so that the jars seal properly. You don't necessarily have to do a hot water bath, but you can do that if you'd like. But yeah, so it's just a really simple way to seal the jars. And then with that maple syrup this year, I did keep some of it, and I did turn some of it into maple candy. So here's my maple candy. It turned out really, really well. It's a soft maple candy. What I had to do is basically just pour one of my pint jars of maple syrup back into the pot, let it come to 240 degrees. Then I let it cool down to about 175, gave it a really, really good rough stir, like a hard stir, for about 2 minutes, and then once it started to turn kind of that more opaque color and started to solidify a little bit, I had to quickly pour it onto some parchment paper, spread it out, and let it complete the cool down process. But it's actually a really nice soft candy. It does have a little bit of a smoky flavor from being initially boiled over the campfire. But yeah, so it was a really fun process, and I got to do something new and different this year with the maple syrup, turning it into the soft maple candy. But I hope you enjoyed watching a little bit of our boiling process this year. Don't forget to leave any comments in the comment section below, questions, feedback, anything like that. Always give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when we post new videos. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for tagging along.